Live from the Audiodrome. This is the Illinois Department of Sound podcast. I'm Joe Wallace.
And I am markobarloco.
And together we are the Illinois Department of Sound, and we're taking a podcast journey through improvised music and the things that inspire us, as a music collective. And we are just starting this podcast journey. So
this is our very first recording event for the podcast journey.
Yeah.
Yet we have probably 7,000 hours of recorded material, especially if we break each recording session down into its various individual tracks.
Yeah.
We have a lot of source material, both video and audio. Joe, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Joe Wallace. I am one half of Illinois Department of Sound. I handle keyboards and bass guitar and noisemakers and pitched mouth noises and anything I can get my hands on to make noise with. That's kind of my contribution. How about you?
That's great, Joe. I am Mark Barlow, actually Mark Barlow. The moniker Markobarloco I've used for years as both a visual artist name and a sonic artist name. It just seemed like too great of an opportunity to waste, to not be Markobarloco. And I actually like being Marco. I like it's hard. I have a group of old friends that called me Marco, and my family calls me Marco. Mostly because I don't want to be a mark in the sense of, you
want to make your mark, but you don't want to be a mark?
Yeah, I want to make my mark, but I don't want to be a mark.
Yeah. The old
it's
Carney version, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a sucker born every minute. I do not want to be that mark. And it's hard. I think that's hard not to be a mark. Maybe. I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
What do you contribute to IDoS? I gave my...
Oh, that
my
was
little,
a good go. Thank you. Yeah. I contribute irony and sarcasm and avoidance. And I work knob. We turn knobs. We both turn knobs. I love turning knobs, and I play... a lot of signal generation starts with electric stringed instruments, electric bass, electric guitars running through various kinds of pedals and processors. Then I've got a small selection of sound synthesis devices, kind of a standalone synthesizer units. And I love to bring in, the occasional handheld tape deck, messing with cassette tapes, messing with contact microphones on various objects. That always seems really good. I always feel like there's a time where I need to step away from that. I also have just a couple of digital, what are they, Joe? They're digital instruments that are on my iPad and my iPhone that I have dropped into with great pleasure several times. One is a small application that has, for me, a really super great, easy to manipulate classic 808 sound that I really love. And would I love to have an old school original 808? Absolutely. But I've never even looked for one. I've never done the dive. I don't have like an actual drum machine. Although both you, Joe Wallace, and I, Markobarloco, we do sit at the occasional acoustic drum kit, and we're both incredibly accomplished percussive players, and that is where I bring in the sarcasm, Joe.
I've been playing for a whopping 11 months.
Yeah, and we,
I know everything now.
And I've studied with some amazing people, but that does not mean that I've learned a single thing. And but percussion is it finds its place.
It's funny, whenever I've done a lot of band interviews in my life, and whenever you get more than two people in a musical or sonic partnership, everybo's got their own idea about what the collective is and what they're about and how it all works. And it's interesting to get everybody's interpretation. So for Illinois Department of Sound, which we handily shortened to IDoS. For IDoS, the way I view what we do is that we're sonic experimenters. Now I know you don't like that term though, because
I like explorers.
Yes, sonic explorers. To experiment, you have to have a hypothesis, and that's what you've said this whole time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of it's a little grind.
Yeah,
it always makes me grind a little bit, just in that I want an experiment to be repeatable, and I want other individuals to be able to take that on. And we actually have constructed conceptual approaches to sound collection, to editing, that border on repeatable experimental kinds of ways. They haven't flushed out into recordings yet, into published recordings. In this duo, I am across the board far more bird sound and less ornithologist. Joe is an amazing historian and writer, has an incredible ability to not lock us into, but to place us in descriptions inside a broader cultural context that I don't do. I don't do that very well, and I'm so glad that you do, and I'm so glad that you do all the other things that you do. For example, yesterday we released into our Illinois Department of Sound YouTube channel our 21st video. And this video, it's the video that goes along with the album. And Joe, what's the name of the album?
It's called From Botany Bay to Bodega Bay, and those are two references to cinema that if you're not a film nerd, you won't get, but I'll explain them for the uninitiated. Botany Bay was the colony that Ricardo Montalban starts in Star Trek when he's exiled by Captain Kirk to this planet. And so Botany Bay is like this genetically engineered race of superhumans. That's where they live. And then in Star Trek 2, they revisit that whole thing. And it's really ridiculous. But Bodega Bay is where a lot of Hitchcock's The Birds happens. And I just thought it was funny that you go from outer space to the bird infestation. And
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And we drop we often for the naming of things, we drop ideas back and forth. Although Joe is incredibly creative in the naming of things, I'm a little bit more, maybe a little drier and analytic in a way. Maybe significantly less entertaining. Your titling of our work
for that, though.
Is really entertaining. But the new video is really, really lovely. It's a technical departure from what we've done in the past because it is multi-layered. It's got, at times it has 4 layers in it. It involves past little bits of video from other works. We both generate video to have as raw material. And it's so beautiful to see these bits and pieces come back and
Yeah.
kind of resurface. It's a real treat. The video, the album is just under an hour long. The video is the same, presented into the world simultaneously on our YouTube channel. I imagine that this album will as well hit the streaming services. It has a real solid vibe to me. What do you think?
We're, the problem with a long form work like this, 56 minutes and change, is that it's hard to decide whether or not to break it up into a traditional album structure, or if you want to let the single nearly hour-long track serve as the album and forget about the organizing principle of having 10 or a dozen tracks or whatever. And, in the age of streaming, you would think that that's like less of a conundrum, but I find that it's still, there's still damage from the old music industry. This idea that an album is broken up into individual, easily digestible chunks, and less John Cage, where it's on the listener to do a thing in order to get the work. In traditional record making, it's on the artist to make it packaged and easily digestible and all that. And I find myself having a bit of an allergy to the easily digested part. And, we kind of have these dilemmas every time, because it's like, well, do we break it up? Do we just hit you over the head all at once with it? There are choices.
Absolutely. The last time that we had such a dilemma, we were sitting in front of 10 1-hour compositions.
Yeah.
And that were post production, edited, beautiful. 10 of them, each one was an hour long. And we ultimately, because some of the limitations of the digital streaming platforms, we dropped those into two separate 5-hour albums, which I think is delightful. Joe Wallace and Marco Barloco are, without question, committed to and experts at the extended long form structure. We just do that. We do that, so we just can't help but drone on and on and on.
I tend to think of it as hyperextending it.
It's hyperextension.
So it's like there might be a little damage.
It is like it's we are the equivalent of the circus contortionist, perhaps.
And that's why, and I'm stealing a line from David Bowie here, we are the Gilbert and George of rock.
Oh, nice. Well, I never heard that. That's lovely.
I read that in Brian Eno's diary from about 94, A Year with Swollen Appendices, it was called.
Oh, that's lovely.
All kinds of little weird bombs in there for
That's
you to...
beautiful. They wear lovely English suits as
They
well,
do.
because that's their hometown. I was going to mention another thing, Joe. What was it? Do you remember? This happens a lot when we're working
we were
together.
talking about the 10-hour conundrum.
We were indeed, and the new and those two albums are titled Volume 1 and Volume 2. And what are the titles of those albums, Joe? Do you recall? Free Jazz.
Yeah, free jazz for today's expensive lifestyles. Thank you.
Yeah.
It took me a minute because the caffeine
Free
is
Jazz
still...
for today's expensive lifestyles. I love those albums. So I thought if I may, Joe, I would share the current Bay album, the Bay's albums. One of the cool things about that is that it's both visually and sonically doubled. It is our first release of a recording process where IDoS plays with IDoS. We had, for that particular recording, we had a designed composition that was an hour long that we played in the studio, and then we played along with and against, inspired by and battled with our original recording. And we've done that a handful of times. This particular one, I think, may have just kind of shaken out in the hopper to be seen as more successful. I'm not exactly sure. But I really love it. And that this album is layered twice. It's layered.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it basically has 4 of us instead of 2 of us, and that's rare. We rarely do that.
We cloned ourselves
Exactly.
digitally.
Beautiful.
I mean, everybody re-records, but fewer people take a spontaneous performance and then use that as the backing track for yet another spontaneous performance. And, that's what Illinois Department of Sound is all about. If you haven't experienced our work yet, we are improvised music. We're not loopers like Ed Sheeran, though looping pedals do find their way into our work. We're more about kind of pulling these moments out of the ether and making them linger. And the entire idea is that nobody knows what's going to happen next, including us, and then everybody's surprised.
There's a major amount of call and response, and but really, and not responding repetitively in the call, after the call.
Yeah.
But we're handing each other bits and pieces all the time, and in real time. It's very interesting to me in that when we started now over, 2.5 years ago, is that right? Short of 2.5 years ago
now.
I felt, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I felt like there was going to be an incredible amount of work done in the post, where we would be capturing our live performances via X number of inputs going into some type of recording console. And each one of those tracks, I felt like they would be, each track would be like a color, an independent color on a palette.
Yeah.
And then those bits and pieces, I've said that like 1,000 times already, bits and pieces. And all those bits and pieces would then be available for mixing and remixing and working and reworking and really creating things in kind of more of a maybe a sterile way. I don't mean sterile, but maybe like in a
Hermetically sealed environment, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. But ultimately, that has not happened. And most of our work now is really generated. It's almost as if we almost always play live and record live and in the post action. It's there's work. Joe does a lot of work to make it sound as beautiful as it is, but it's far less work than I thought it was going to be, and I really love that. I think for me that's a testament to our success and our gelling.
Well, it's funny because, people who don't have much experience or any experience with improvised music and jamming and riffing, it's the first music was improvised music, and that's what kind of informs the whole thing. I mean, this is a very primal, early man sort of thing to do, but with all of this technology now, more technology that was available on the Apollo missions,
right?
It's staggering to me, and I love that. What we do. If you're an outsider to this musical milieu, it seems weird and kind of contrarian and stubborn and willful, but when you get it, it all makes a lot more sense because it doesn't make any sense.
Sure. I think one, perhaps one important characteristic is that for the most part, I feel like we are not denying beat and meter and chorus and verse structure. We're not denying that out of spite.
Yeah, yeah.
But there is something, the baseline of what we do, I feel, is pulse. And that pulse for me feels really animal in the best way. It feels like it's our hearts, it's our nervous systems, it's our emotions. And I feel like this is like I mean, sometimes we're post a recording event or inside an entire recording event. We may jam, whatever that is. We may like set in and make the thing happen for 20 minutes or so. But sometimes after those, it's a moment of kind of emotional and physical exhaustion where it was my goodness, we went to places. I mean, I just simply sonically go to places that I had no idea that I could, and I certainly wasn't planning to.
Yeah.
Kind of maybe part of that is the nature of improvisation, where what it is that we do is we are building something that is by our own commitment to participation and our engagement and really showing up and really being here. That is what allows us to create things that are bigger than ourselves. And I believe that happens.
I think so too. And I feel that, our work has a lot to do with being in the moment. There's sort of a Zen idea there where you have to be tuned in to what's happening around you. And, you do have to have mindfulness, and you have to have situational awareness. And it's, the way people look at a virtuoso guitar player is like, oh, I could never do that. But they don't realize that 50% of that virtuosity is mechanical. It's like you do it again and again and again and again. You do it really slow, and then you slowly speed it up until it's as fast as it's meant to be. And there's a lot of sort of by rote muscle memory training that you don't do with improvised music. And it's way more freeing in some ways. I mean, being a virtuoso player is its own freedom. You can do anything without thinking about it because you have been this thrall to the instrument. But with what we do, when you bring that to the table, that's an extra tool in your toolbox, but it's not the main event. So you get a guitar guy like Joe Satriani, and it's like, well, your skills are good, but they're not central. And I feel like people who have built their careers based on that sort of thing would feel very out of place in an improvised music sort of way, because now you're not the center of attention, the work is.
And speaking to that, I think one of the things that we have to do, because we're not virtuosic, is that we have to suspend judgment and really allow ourselves to just punk rock this shit out sometime, because that's kind of I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s in bands in a really small town in western Wisconsin, and it seemed like everybody was in a band and everybody was like, just cranking it out.
Yeah.
And I remember being in like a pretty straightforward, rock and roll cover band, and this particular band auditioned a singer from out of town, right? And this guy drove from out of town to come audition with us, and he brought in crazy Sex Pistols, Ramones, all whatever, the whole list of things that I had not yet had access to. And this might have been 79 or 80. I don't know. And but that was like, oh, I can do that. Right. That was like a whole new thing. And it really, it kind of scared me. But I was like really thrilled by it at the same time. And I think that just kind of continues on today. Right. Like Joe Strummer, got us ready to do all of this.
I wonder what Joe Strummer would say about these times. And I mean, that's a rabbit hole that we don't have to get into. But, I am curious, what would What would Joe Strummer say?
I don't know. Maybe he would focus on the beauty. Maybe he would do that, like with a fist, with shaking an angry fist, but focusing on what's lovely.
And
are we going to step into some instruments and play a quick thing?
because this is our first podcast, we don't have a tradition yet, so we're establishing our new traditions. We are in our studio now, and we are surrounded by all of our gear and stomp boxes and everything. So without further ado, this is going to be a regular feature of the podcast. We want to incorporate a short performance into each one, and we do these new for the podcast, so this isn't really us mining our albums in any way. This is stuff we do custom for this.
We're going to literally get up and get away from these microphones and go mess with stuff.